Welcome and thank you all for being here today. My name is Amira Hidalgo and I will present and moderate this live session. Before introducing you to Sophie Halbeisen, our speaker, I would like to present this brand new e-learning platform, Talentum 360. Let's take some minutes to watch the video presentation. It's a pleasure for us to present this new executive business unit, Training and Talent Development Center, Talentum 360. Talentum 360 is a virtual training and specialization hub developed by ClearWords Translations focused on the global translation and localization market. Technology, artificial intelligence, advanced translation techniques, business, project management, and the game localization are just a few examples of the topics deals within the course. The aim of this training center is to provide innovate on-the-job training, continuous education, and professional development for the company's human talent and external audience. The main objective is to be closer to collaborators and professionals, providing and sharing knowledge and the new tools. We understand that the translation and localization is changing and we're presenting new tools. And we want to be part of this move. This new business unit is for all of us. It's to reach our professional development and to offer the translation and localization community a one-stop place for career development. We celebrate this launch with you all today and a great speaker that will be sharing her opinion about the importance of continuous education and how technology can help us in the process. Let me introduce you to Sophie Halbeisen. She's a global renowned professional and the Director of Business Development at Planet, the leading translations business management system that helps language service provide manage their business process and translation workflow. She will talk about project management and technologies for the translation and the localization industry within the framework of the importance of continuing education. Welcome, Sophie. Thank you so much for being here today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Yes, you already said my name is Sophie Halbeisen. I'm the Director of Business Development for Plunet. We are a tech company in the language industry, and we work for language service providers doing business, process, and project management technology, and located in New York. Beautiful city, beautiful day today, and I'm really excited to be here and speak about the current state of project management in the industry, what we see in the future, and share a couple of tips what to do to stay on top of the trends.
Perfect. Before we begin, something very important. We are going on live streaming on YouTube. You can leave any question for Sophie because at the end, we will have some minutes for her to answer all these questions. Now, yes, Sophie, it's all yours.
Great, thank you so much. Yeah, I want to start with why we're having this topic today. And it's mostly because, of course, when you work in technology and the space, a lot of people are asking about lights out project management. A lot of people are asking about AI influencing process and project management. And there's always a bit of this feeling that everybody wants to automate everything. However, we actually see automation, especially when it comes to project management, as a very complex topic with a lot of different factors that all have to be taken into consideration. So just automating everything is not working as well as people might think. So yeah, we kind of want to discuss that today and kind of make sure everybody knows what to expect, what the future might bring, and how to be prepared for it. So to start, I want to clear up a couple of the terminologies. So first of all, lights out project management is that term a lot of people are hearing. Lights out project management basically means that a whole workflow for translation or localization project management is not touched by a human. So from the beginning of the project, launching the product until delivery, basically nobody is going to do anything. Then we also have project management by exception, which means that a lot of stuff is automated, all of the things where we don't really need human interaction. We do have automation, but if everything goes wrong or if any exception occurs, a project manager, so a human, still has to intervene. Project management by exception is what we see for the future, especially when we look at different types of projects. I mean, there are, of course, some projects where it's easier to automate, others where it's harder. We will talk about both of those as well. And then also there's a terminology of artificial intelligence and rule-based automation. So again, AI, artificial intelligence, a lot of people are asking, when is AI coming to project management or is it already there? And I want to clear up a little bit of those terms as well. So rule-based automation is actually the current standard when it comes to project management software, at least the out-of-the-box software that is on the market. And rule-based automation means that each action that a software takes is based on something that was configured by a human, which means you set up a certain logic or a certain configuration, and then the software would follow that. That is a little different than artificial intelligence or AI, where the system is actually able to make a decision, and the system basically learns a bit like an actual human brain. So based on a lot of data and a lot of training, the software basically makes a decision. With rule-based automation, it's the human who made the decision and then configured the software in a certain way. And yeah, of course, we see AI helping a lot, especially also on the translation side, and machine translation, neuro-machine translation is a really great tool. On the project management side, though, we don't have the same amount of data just because the sheer amount of data is so much larger when it comes to translation. I mean, we have billions of words that get translated every year. When it comes to the amount of projects, of course, there's not the exact same of data, and there's not the same right or wrong. In a translation, there are, of course, always multiple ways, or not always, but in a lot of cases, multiple ways to translate a sentence or a segment, but there is a right or wrong. Whereas in project management, there really is not. There industry standards, there are best practices, but in the end of the day, you can do whatever you want to get that project through. So there is a little bit less of a standard, which makes AI very hard because A, we don't have the amount of data, and B, we don't have clear standards. So it's very hard to actually train a machine in a good way or in a sensible way where AI would actually help us and not make things even more complicated. So what does it mean for project managers? That's, of course, the next question. A lot of people in the industry work as project managers. And when I started in this industry 7 years ago, it was a little bit of a different, different outlook because a lot of people were thinking project managers might get less and less. We cannot really see that. We still see all of our customers hiring project managers left and right, but the role of the project manager changed a bit. And personally, I think for very great and positive reasons, because the job just became a little more exciting because a lot of the things can be automated, and a lot of the things that can get automated are actually not the fun parts. So what we are seeing for the role of project managers is moving away from manual tasks, from repetitive tasks. So for example, upload or sharing of files, downloading files, assigning vendors, creating POs, all of the things that are kind of dull and repetitive. So project managers actually have time to use their skills for more complex tasks, actually the ones where human interaction is required. So of course, I don't think that's new for everybody, for anybody, is that soft skills are super important, but we are seeing that becoming more and more important. So the role will require things like customer relationship management or giving vendors feedback, crisis management if something doesn't go wrong, basically being able to solve problems quickly on the spot. I'm sure every project manager knows these too well. So all of the things where machines are not really good at. When it comes to, for example, integrations with accounting tools, it's such a good example where machine makes so much sense because you just want all of that data to go from one system to the other because it's very clear and there's no human value that can really be added. There's more risk of human error. When it comes to things like giving feedback or customer relationship management, that's really where your skills come in, and you can show your knowledge, you can use your empathy. So definitely we see the project manager being less on the organizational side, but the people skills are becoming more and more important. But then, of course, technology skills are also super important. And we see the role change a bit from before. A lot of people were looking for people who can use the software, can use technology. And of course, that's still the case. But there's also a very big need for the people who can configure the machines. So a little bit like on the translation side, we need people who train machine translation. We also need people who can set up these rules in the rule-based automation in project management tools. So the most valuable people, of course, are always the ones who can combine all of that. But it's very important for project managers or operation managers to understand how the software works and what is behind it. So if you're the person who can see this is something we should automate, or this is something where our team doesn't really need to spend time on because it doesn't really add value to the chain, but then we can use that time and just, I don't know, call our client and have coffee with them or talk to a vendor and catch up with them and make sure you know what's going on with them, and all of these things that are extremely important to run a business. I mean, we're all not here to just work. We also want to enjoy our time and foster those relationships. So if you know how to use the software to actually create value, that is a huge asset for every company. And we are even guilty of it. develop a software, we develop BlueNet, and we don't even use all the features. And we sometimes need to kind of take a step back and rethink, like, what can the software actually do for us? Because that's actually the point. The software is there for us to help us. The software doesn't rule how we're doing things. And yeah, so if I can give one tip that, again, we have to follow as well, is really thinking, like, how can we use the software to serve us best, and kind of take that time to maybe rethink processes, because very often you do things a certain way because that's how you have configured it once. But the business is changing, and if the last year showed us one thing, is that, yeah, things can change super quickly, and all of a sudden we have to be flexible, which, by the way, our industry, I think, showed that we are all extremely flexible, and even in a crisis situation, we're able to pivot. And that was very, very cool to see. So yeah, we kind of also started really looking at technology a bit like a gym. So not just signing up once and thinking you will get in shape. It's a process, and something where you have to kind of put in the work, make it a habit, and yeah, make sure that your requirements, if your requirements change, that you're also changing the software that supports your business. So the software gurus, the people who really understand the people and the software, definitely, again, an incredible asset. So the future will be project management by exception, meaning we want to automate everything that's redundant, anything where the human can't really add value. But we want to keep, and we have to keep, all of these human interactions and human steps where there's a value creation. And I mean, the same goes for translation as well. No, I don't think any translator is out of a job, despite MT and NMT and all of these scenarios. Another thing, and I feel like everybody is still looking for so much talent in the industry. So yeah, it's not something to worry about. And then, yeah, soft skills. I mean, that goes kind of for every job, I guess. I mean, we also see it all the time. The people who are able to give feedback and have empathy with clients, but also with vendors they're working with, are usually the ones that really bring the company forward. And when it comes to technology, it's not just important to use it, it's also really important to understand it and yeah, know how to use it. And yeah, so that's the role of the project manager. But then there's also the role of automation in general. So another question when it comes to automation versus human interaction is, which processes should be automated, should be fully automated, and which ones should not? It's always easy to say that, but what does it mean? And there's kind of like one rule I like to use from a technology perspective, which is always, the less exceptions there are, the easier it is to automate. Because automation is expensive, and automation is something you need to configure and something you need to maintain. And if you automate something, I always like to use the example of accounting tools. All of that data once a day goes from A to B, and it's an easy mapping. Perfect example for something that's easily automatable. But then when we look at everything that has exceptions, and project management has a lot of exceptions, little things like maybe they uploaded the wrong file, or you just, I don't know, see it's a corrupt file, or the client chooses the wrong domain and says, oh, this is a legal translation. And you immediately see, no, that's actually not a legal text. They must have clicked the wrong button. So a lot of these things, yeah, are important to know. And in project management, when we map out workflows with our customers, first of all, pretty much everybody has a completely different set of workflows. I mean, there's some standard ones: translation, editing, proofreading, DTP, that of course most people are using. But then there's so many exceptions that it's sometimes really hard to fully automate. So what we also very much recommend is just automating bits of workflows. So maybe for one client, it makes sense to automate the quote creation because that's very straightforward. You have other clients where quote creation might be the most human task ever, because there's a lot of consulting involved. You have to go back and forth. Same goes for file prep. I mean, there are projects where you don't need to do any file prep. The file is easy and you can immediately run that through a CAT tool and get going. There are other files that are very complex where a file prep step is needed. So just look at how many exceptions are there, and the less exceptions there are, the easier it will be to save time with automation. Because otherwise, if you automate and then you run into multiple exceptions, then it doesn't really help you save time, because you just run into issues and then you have to kind of fix them, which takes time and usually also creates a bit of frustration. So that's one thing. And that's, by the way, the exceptions are hard for both AI and rule-based automation, especially, of course, for rule-based automation, because you have to basically configure each of these exceptions in the software. But AI, to learn exceptions, needs a lot of data. So then we come again to the problem that there is not enough data out there to actually create sensible machine learning there. The other thing is complexity. So when you have complex projects or projects where you need empathy or creativity, transcreation is also always such a great example, where it's just very, very hard to even use computer-aided translation or MT. So the more empathy you need in a process, the harder it is to actually automate. I just had a great example in my own life. I was talking to a AI bot for customer relationship management for a customer service request, and everything that was in the standard actually went really well. It was a great AI bot, actually. They could really talk to me like a human. I was very impressed by it. But then all of a sudden things really, really went wrong because of a misunderstanding of what the bot was saying. And I got a bit emotional. And of course, the AI bot cannot really tell emotions. And the whole thing went in a completely different direction. All of a sudden, they asked me to cancel. They were about to cancel my whole subscription. And that's when I realized I'm talking to a bot, because a human would have immediately known. It's like, oh, she's just now frustrated. And we just have to make sure the person feels valued on the other side of the aisle. And again, the same goes for projects as well. The moment you need empathy, if you have a customer who is upset, really, it's not a good way to just slap an automated workflow on that. So again, project management by exception comes in there as well. The system needs to notify you if something goes wrong, that there needs to be a human who immediately knows and immediately is able to step in. Because in some cases, automation can be hurtful. Again, my example with the AI customer service bot, they almost lost a customer just because they had a bot trying to solve my issue that was too complex to solve for a machine. And so of course, relationship management, customer relationship management, how to automate the relationship with the vendors. The vendors are I have not met a single LSP or a language service company that said that freelancers were not their most valuable asset. So again, not really something you want to automate, the relationship with your most valuable asset. And we also see a big difference with agencies that work directly with freelancers and agencies that work with other agencies, because you can usually automate way more on the agency side than if you work with individuals. Because when it comes to working with freelancers and actual linguistic talent, you might want to have a more personal approach, because you're talking to you're not talking to a business, you're talking to an individual. And we had a really interesting stat from a research we did in 2020 when we talked to people using our vendor portal. We wanted to get some feedback there. And we asked everybody, what do they dislike about the vendor portals? And a lot of the comments said that they refer to our first come, first serve method for request. And they said that they dislike the impersonal communication, and actually said that that kind of assignment affected the quality of the project. So these are just things to keep in mind when automating. Can automation be hurtful? If you save some time on the one hand, but then your vendors are not really as motivated as they were before, then again, you might actually lose time somewhere else. And I'm not against automation at all. We are working on a tool that does that, but it needs to make sense. It always needs to be sensible. And another thing, of course, is money. You need a lot of projects to actually save money with automation. One of my favorite examples is Amazon. I think they saved, I don't know, something like 2 centimeters of tape in their warehouse due to like a big automation project, and that can save them millions a year. Which makes sense if you are a very big company, but if you only pack 3 packages, the 3 of 2 centimeters will not really make any difference. So it doesn't make sense to spend all of that money on automation. So it makes a lot of sense to really see how much can you automate and what are the time savings on the other side. Again, automation is crucial and inevitable, but also it needs to make, of course, financial sense. I spoke to a customer as an example once who wanted to connect to a content management system for one big project. And the cost for that integration, because they needed it super quickly, was a couple of $1,000s, and there was no way to make that cheaper. So I asked how big is the project? How much is the profit? Because if the profit is lower than that, and you cannot really use it for any other project, it needs to be also, of course, a financial decision. So yeah, so cost, of course, also always plays a role. And then one thing we have all been concentrating on just this year a lot, because we made some changes in the system that made this even more obvious, is you're only as good with your automation as the data you have. So everything in your database needs to be flawless to ensure that automation really works. If you have corrupted data, if you have data that is not complete, you can really run into issues. Simple things like if you don't have the email address for a vendor at the right place and an automated email goes out and they don't receive it, or if you don't have your price list set up and tagged with different domains to make sure when a certain project comes in, it also pulls the right pricing on the customer level, but also on the vendor level. There's so many little things and so much data that is in those systems, not just ours, in all of the systems. And it's really, really important to maintain and work on the database that you're working with. And a lot of our customers had to kind of do a bit of a rethink, like how we have our data structure. Does that really make sense? And if we want to automate, do we have all the data that we actually want to use? Again, for example, if you want the right results when you're looking for a specialist, you have to make sure these specialists are tagged with their qualifications and their skills, and all of that has to be done at some point. And so in AI, you always say garbage in, garbage out. If you put bad data in, you also get bad data out. Of course, when it comes to AI, there's also the data bias that is a huge issue, but this would open a can of worms and a completely separate discussion, which I'm always happy to have on the side, data bias and what that does to automation. And but for us, very important in our small databases to ensure that the data in the systems is always well maintained. And of course, that could also create a space for new jobs or new parts of your role, where maintaining databases and making sure you have non-corrupted data is just part of our jobs. To kind of summarize, the less exceptions you have, the easier automation is. And everything that doesn't really add value to the process should be automated. But everything that adds value to the process, everything that is related to relationship building, should not be automated as much as you can. And creativity and empathy, also two things that are very, very hard to automate. I, of course, could talk about this for ages, but I also wanted to open this up and see if there are any questions. I already saw a couple of questions coming in the chat. So with this, I want to open it up to the audience and see what are your questions, what are your thoughts, your feedback, and then, yeah, see where that takes us.
Thank you very much, Sophie, for giving us this valuable point of view about project management and technology for the translation and localization industry. We have questions, and if we want to start with Milena. Milena is saying, hi, Sophie, hi, everyone. What's about the acceptance of automation on the part of clients and freelancers?
Yes, that is an actually a great question. Also something we talk about a lot. Of course, it depends a lot on, so let's start with the customer side. So on the customer side, it depends a lot which industry you're serving. So for example, we have a lot of customers who work in the government sector, so the public sector, and very often the acceptance of technology is a little lower than it is in the private sector. Of course, there's also a lot of things that play a role. So for example, a lot of governments work with older technologies, even work with older browsers. The same actually goes for healthcare here in the United States sometimes. So there are some sectors where it's harder to actually get people to accept the technology. Comes to the private sector, usually there is more acceptance, but there's still a big need to help and support customers with automation and kind of like a training process, I would even call it. So sometimes we have people give up because they're just like, oh, you know, we offered the portal, but people are not really jumping on it. It's because some people are also afraid. And I feel like that fear needs to be taken away from people through better training, better material, because I honestly get it. New technology is scary, even for people who work in technology. We just opened our vaccines here in the US, and everybody had to sign up on a portal and find appointments. And people were freaking out, not just the old people, like everybody thought. Even the young people were kind of overwhelmed with a completely new technology that we just have never really encountered. And it's also like an emotional topic. So kind of the same sometimes happens with customers as well. They're used to sending an email and it worked fine. But once they are on the technology and once they get the advantages of the technology, usually they're very happy and stick to it. So yes, the acceptance is going up. But the need for training is still very high. And the same goes to freelancers. The acceptance on the freelancer side is definitely higher than on the customer side. Of course, the nature of the business relationship is a bit different. You are a vendor. Clients can sometimes make decisions that might not make sense. But on the freelancer side, we see a huge difference to what it was a couple of years ago, because technology just became such a big part of working that there's more acceptance there. Very few are not using the portal or like the automation features, but we do still hear that it's important that the work is still valued and the individual relationships are nurtured, because nobody just wants to get a mass email that goes to 1,000 people and then accept it and deliver. That's not really what we're aiming for.
We have another question from Micaela. Why is the Planet the most popular file management system in translation industry?
If we are, or why?
Why is Planet the most popular file management system in translation industry?
First of all, thank you. I love to hear that. I think, of course, one thing that is big for us is that we were one of the first, if not the first. So we have a lot of experience, and therefore, of course, always an advantage being around for such a long time. And we have a lot of customers, and we always tried to really develop the system with our customers based on their feedback, which, of course, the more customers you have, the harder it gets because you just get so much. And but another really big thing that we hear a lot is flexibility and integration with CAD tools. So one of the things that we really focus on is the good integrations with our CAD tool partners. For example, MemoQ, SDL, XDM, MemSource, all of these great tools, because we want to make sure you can, of course, work with your favorite tool and you don't have to use some MT or CAD that we work with. So good integrations with the CAD tools and the flexibility. So Plunet never tells you really what to do or automates for you. You have a lot of control over it. And that's one feedback we get a lot, that's extremely important. Because, sometimes as a tech company, we think like, oh, this is a great idea and this is how everybody should work. And then a lot of customers are just like, no, that's not how we work. We work differently. We need that flexibility to do something differently. So yeah, I think these would be two of our USPs.
We have another question from Anne. Which software do you prefer or is the best for agile project management?
For agile project management in software development or in translation project management, I have to ask.
It's a good question for Anne, that one. You can say both of them if you want to.
I mean, of course, for translation project management, it has to be Plunet. I wouldn't work here if that wasn't the case. I think it's extremely important that when you have agile project management, that you can make changes in the process, and that's also something that is extremely important for our workflows. And we worked very hard on it, and it was very, very challenging to offer that flexibility, to add a job in the middle, add a parallel job, or just in a running workflow, go a different direction. And I mean, the same goes for development. We actually work with Jira, in case that was also asked. We work with different tools for an agile development process.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Sophie. We have another one from Nestor. From your point of view, which are the talents needed in the future of translation industry?
Also a great question. I already mentioned, of course, project management related with the talents that, I mean, project manager is one of the talents that we will still need. And all of the different qualifications from soft skills, problem solving, being able to work with customers and vendors, giving feedback, all of these things on the project management side. Then on the technology side, I do think technology managers is an extremely important job, or platform managers even. We see different names for it. We have technology managers, platform managers, system managers. So that's kind of that person I was talking about that manages and masters the technology, that the person who knows how to configure the software and understands the processes in a way and kind of like translates that into software. For that, you don't even need to have a background in coding or IT. You just really need to understand the business processes. So I think that's also one of the roles I see. And maybe to give like a little bit of data, but when we look at our customers that show the most growth, it's usually people who have that role on staff. So it's a very interesting thing we just recently saw, because these are the people who use the software really as a value add, and they help and accelerate their growth with that. At least that's what we hope, and that's what they say. But yeah, so technology managers / platform managers or system managers, and then of course when we talked about the databases, I'm not sure if there will be a database manager, if that will be like a role, but basically people who make sure that the data is very well maintained. And I already see that a lot, of course, also on the MT side and the CAT tool side. You have to make sure your translation memories are clean as well. And that I also see a need for on the project management side.
We have another question from Tucker Johnson. He says, what are the most important data that TMS systems should be tracking now and in the next 5 years?
Tracking?
Yeah, tracking.
I do have to ask, when you say tracking, do you mean the data that the owner of the TMS tracks, or we as the software provider? Because as the software provider, and I think that's also a very important, I would just answer both before we go the route. Let's start with that. So we actually don't we don't access the data of our customers. I think it's extremely important that our customers own the data, right? So we don't take the data and analyze it, as much as that would be super interesting. But of course, we also have to follow very strict security rules and guidelines when it comes to that. So we don't really track any data. When it comes to what should project managers or the language companies track, I mean, there's so much. There's of course, when it comes to profit margins, I think it's extremely important to look at the exact costs, because as much as we all are passionate about the industry, I mean, I'm sure nobody in the industry is not, but of course, we're also running businesses. So having a real overview of your costs and your revenues to make sure that you specialize on the industries that you're good at. And also, of course, to have a very good tracking of what kind of projects you're doing, so you can see your specialty. Another thing we saw with our most successful clients or growth clients was that everybody who had a specialty actually grew faster than the ones that were a little more broad when it came to their services. So I think it's really important to track and see what are the projects that we are good at. Do we have a focus? Is, for example, healthcare or life science or legal, is that our niche? And then really focus on that and becoming so good at that you have a good and profitable business, rather than trying to do everything.
We have one more question from Paola. New changes were introduced in Plunet lately. What do you guys take into account when you implement updates?
Yeah, so three major things. We take into account the feedback from our customers, what they are looking at. We're taking into account our own research and what we see make sense on the roadmap going forward, which honestly is very much influenced by what our customers want, because it's not that we all of a sudden come up with something else. But then, of course, also kind of outside regulations have an impact on what we have to develop. One example, for example, is GDPR. So if a new law comes along like GDPR, it's just something we have to factor in. With our latest release, our big push was in regards to assignment automation. So a lot of our customers were asking to automate more when it comes to vendor search and assignment. So we had an overhaul of how we were doing things, which is also one of the reasons why having a clean database or like a good, well-maintained database came in, because it changed how vendors were searched and where they were displayed. So yeah, that we take into consideration what our clients want, not just now, but also in the future. So again, automation on the customer, on the vendor assignment and search side was a big point. Whereas we, for example, were working on the automation on the quote creation side, so that if you ask for a quote, the system would automatically talk to the CAT tool, get the analysis results, and send the quote. But our customers were kind of like, that's not really the automation that we're really seeking. The automation we're really seeking is actually on the vendor side. I mean, of course, both is important. I'm making it a little easier then. But yeah, so these are the things that kind of drive us and drive our new features. So really listening to our customers. And then, of course, we have very different customers. So we have people who work in different ways. So we kind of have to make sure taking it all in and then creating something that can help as many people as possible and is as flexible as possible. And yeah, that's what what inspires us.
Sophie, we have plenty of questions on YouTube, but we go with the last one. Luana is asking, in your opinion, what's the future of translation and localization industry in the next 5 years?
Wow, that's a very big question to answer. It's very hard to really predict. I personally think that it's going to grow a lot. I think what I saw last year, I mean, we've all obviously been in that shock period of like what's going to happen, and being located in New York. I remember last March, I was thinking, how long will we be able to pay our bills? But then it completely changed because translation is essential, and I've never viewed it like that before. And of course now everybody talks about what's an essential business, what is not, and it kind of really made me realize translation or localization and any language service is essential. And yeah, everybody basically came, I mean, at least the people I spoke to in the industry came out actually quite well, because yeah, business was even growing. So I do think business will grow. And I think one thing that will change, though, is that there will be a lot of M&A activity. A lot of smaller businesses will come together to get into a size where you can have things like, for example, a technology manager, somebody who's responsible for systems. So you just have bigger teams, and also, of course, global teams that can support these large customers that have that big need of translation around the world. And another thing I really see is that even though we were already very global, that things become even more global. I know my boss told me when they were founding Plunet back in 2003, that their idea was that they wanted project managers to be able to work from home. And I was like, that's kind of interesting that you had that thought back in the day, and now it's so normal. But of course, a huge new push to having completely global offices. And that's another thing I think we will see way more, that people are just located everywhere around the world. So it becomes even more important to have centralized data so people can access systems, have centralized systems to work with. But I think it's also really cool because, yeah, we have more international teams, probably a bigger culture mix, and cool new positions will come out of it. So yeah, I'm honestly just very positive about the future. I think we will, yeah, probably just grow. And as long as we make the right decisions and stay with the trends, we will be very successful.
Thank you so much for all the questions. We are going to keep in touch so we can give you all the answers soon. Sophie Halbeson, thank you so much for all the topics that you talk about today.
Of course, thank you. It was really great, and also amazing questions. I've never in my life received so many interesting questions. So I'm just like, oh my God, I wish we could talk about this even longer. It was really great. Thank you.
Thank you so much. One more time, I want to thank you for being part of this event and for joining us today in our first webinar. Don't forget that tomorrow we are having the second webinar with Carlos Palotti, an Argentinian expert and specialist in technological and productive policy, who will be talking about the new skills required on the digital transformation. The webinar will be from this same YouTube channel. You can subscribe and active notification. Also, I remind you that we have our free courses on www.talentum360.com for you to register and to get to know the platform. Before we finish, you can also follow at talentum360.global on Instagram, LinkedIn, and also on Facebook. Thank you so much and see you tomorrow at 3 p.m.